Before we start this show, just a word from our sponsor, 20 by 20 Apparel. Founded in 2015, 20 by 20 Apparel brings original tributes to pro wrestling's classic arenas, moments, and events. They look to spotlight the bloopers, bleeps, and body slams along with the biggest, smallest, strangest, and strongest that pro wrestling has had to offer. Along with their awesome line of pro wrestling apparel, they do offer many services. In the world of wrestling, there are hundreds of shirts, promotions, flyers, social media accounts, and ads. Don't get lost in the sea of parody shirts and display fonts. They can provide professional graphic design services at a reasonable price. 20 by 20 also hand screen prints all the tees in-house. If you would like to discuss possible run of tees, posters, koozies, foam fingers, or whatever, drop them a line. Go to 20 by 20 Apparel. That's the number 20x, the number 20 apparel.com. Now, let's get to the show.
Fresh is the word.
I'm Jim Duggan, got long wood for plenty hoes. I keep it fresher than fresh, but you already know. You suckers bummy, I'm money, I got a ton of flows. My weed loud like a motherfucking thunder roll. Your shit quiet like you ballin' on a budget though. We see your kicks and we laugh and yellin' what are those. You see me shining like a suit on puffy. You know my grindin' shit is too strong, buddy. That's why the dude call money. I be stuntin' like it's nothing at all. Cause it's nothing to me, it's probably something to y'all. Trying to smoke like me, then come and fuck with your dog. Got a closet full of kicks, you can't cop at the mall. And I'm fresher than the freshest, you can tell it's in my essence. Bitch, you see the way I'm rapping, yes I do this shit to death. I tell I'm running out of breath, I tell somebody cut a check. But either way you know it's fresh, and either way you know it's fresh. Fresh, we fresh. Fresh, goddammit, we fresh.
Welcome to the Fresh is the Word podcast. I'm your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier. And on Fresh is the Word, we like to deliver wisdom through great stories from the minds of bright creatives of pop culture. Through those stories, we like to dissect the journey of our guests and present actionable lessons and advice for our listeners, no matter what career or avenue of artistry they pursue. And before we get into this episode, I want to give a shout out to Knox Money, Bang Belushi, and Foulmouth for the theme music for Fresh is the Word. And if you would like to support the podcast, you can always go to freshisthepodcast.com and just share any of the links for any of the episodes on any of your social media platforms. And also, you can subscribe to Fresh is the Word pretty much anywhere that podcasts are streamed. And that includes Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, pretty much everywhere. And please rate and review, especially on Apple Podcasts. It will definitely help out the show. If you want to contact me, you can always reach me by email at djkfresh@gmail.com. Or you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at KFresh is the Word, and on Facebook at facebook.com/KFresh. And you can also follow Fresh is the Word on Twitter at Fresh is the Word, and that's is with an IZ, Instagram at Fresh is the Word Podcast, and Facebook at facebook.com/Fresh is the Podcast. This is episode 167. The guests for this episode are world-renowned scratch DJ producer Kid Koala and award-winning animator and breakdancer JonJon. Recorded at this year's Toronto Comic Arts Festival, TCAF, in which they were presenting their Floor Kids video game. Floor Kids is a new breakdance battle game featuring unique freestyle gameplay, rhythm challenges, and multiplayer sessions. And during our conversation, we talked about the creation process and the evolution of this video game, along with so much more. And before we get into this interview with Kid Koala and JonJon, just want to remind you how you can support the podcast. I am on Patreon now at patreon.com/Fresh is the Word. For as little as $1 a month, you can support Fresh is the Word. And for the $3 a month tier, I will be digging deep into my audio archives for interviews that I've done over the past decade or so for various publications. Some I never even used. We have I have a few up right now with Danny Brown, Cool Keith, 12th Planet, and Jay Dilla's mom, Ma Dukes. Be dropping the second part of that interview real soon. So go to patreon.com/freshwiththeword and check out all the tiers. There's some tiers where you can actually be a part of the podcast. So once again, go to patreon.com/freshwiththeword and help a brother out. All right, let's get into the interview with Kid Koala and JonJon as we talk Floor Kids. Around Toronto at the Toronto Reference Library, and I'm here with Kid Koala and JonJon. They are presenting their Floor Kids game at the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. Introduce yourselves.
What's up? My name's Eric, also known as Kid Koala. I did the music for the game Floor Kids.
Hey, I'm John, otherwise known as JonJon Animation. I created the Floor Kids characters and gave them life, gave them all their moves, and worked with this guy for a long time on this project, so it's great to have it get out there in the world. So thanks for having us on.
Word, definitely. What was the initial idea behind Floor Kids? How did it really get started?
Basically, was animating on a project, a freelance project, and at the time I was heavy into the break scene in Montreal, and I just couldn't get my mind off it, so I just started animating my characters. Just animated the first character, Noogie, doing some 6-step, tested it out, it was hilarious, and then showed it to this guy, and then it's basically went from there.
Yeah, I saw it immediately. This looks amazing. We just could throw some music on there, some crowd noises, and some minimal sound design, and we did, I guess it was one video clip, right? Which
it was kind of like I had Noogie first and then Olive, and it was kind of these two characters and doing solo moves. It's kind of setting it up to be sort of a little battle. Yeah. And he was like, well, how fast can you finish this? And at that time, for me, animation was really slow because I've gotten really fast now. But he was kind of like, well, if it's that slow, let's drop a single, like a solo of Noogie the first month, second month, Olive, then in a couple months, the battle. And that's kind of what we did. We released little clips.
Yeah. How did it evolve from those animations into actually thinking of a game to make?
Yeah, so basically the creative exchange is me and Eric, and then Rena steps in to kind of take the vision long term, find places for the project to exist, because as far as we're concerned, is animation and music, and then we got to find a place for that to actually almost have a purpose,
Yeah, so we thought about maybe doing it as a longer form film at first, but I think what was most attractive about making it into a video game is it allows the user or the player to actually explore all the drawings that John has done. So he's done over 10,000 frames of animation for this game, and it's just in how you play that you can kind of unlock those moves and like figure out your own combos and stuff. So it's a little I like that because it has that interactive element. It's a little less like this is exactly what you're going to see in here for the next 90 minutes. It's like, no, it's up to you and how you play in your own style that's going to bring out, different aspects of the game.
What did you guys do, like, when you sort of got the idea that, hey, this might be good for a video game, for a game in general? Like, what was that first step that you kind of did to, flesh out those ideas to, take that path?
I mean, I just cold called. Like, I know Montreal, where we're from, is an actual hub for a lot of the video game programming communities. Neither of us knew any coders personally, but I just sort of threw it out into the ether and just, I think it was a post, like a social media post, or maybe I put up, I asked around, hey, do you know any coders? And then, so word got around. It's like, hey, Kid Koala's looking to just meet up with someone from the indie game scene, because what I knew about that scene was that they were doing very advanced, very ambitious work, but small crews, that are just finally, get to make games that have the aesthetic and the gameplay that maybe is unprecedented. And there. So that's basically I kind of threw it out into the Montreal scene, and we met I remember meeting maybe 8 or 9 people, all from different aspects of the scene. Some were producers, some were coders and stuff.
With video games changed from like when we were growing up. It was all huge mega companies.
Yes.
AAA titles. You couldn't do your own video game unless you were kind of on the inside of that and sort of trading off your idea for resources or something. So I think around like 2009 it became more possible because I guess software and coding was advancing, but also the platforms were allowing independent games to be released. So after 2009, I think that was when it was becoming financially viable or successful for people to just make it by themselves, And so we kind of came late to that bubble because people were already in the indie zone making games. And then there was a game called Journey that we were checking out that really brought our sort of like our artistic leanings towards video games. It kind of like, I think Journey is a game that a lot of people saw and noticed and were like, okay, maybe there's place for us to bring our idea into that. So when we started Floor Kids, it was actually it was like for the mobile realm, and then eventually it just morphed through.
Yeah, we met Mike Wisniewski from a team of coders called Hollow Labs. He was based in Montreal at the time, and we just sort of brainstormed a bunch of ideas, right? We showed John has many different art styles. I have tons of different genres of music that I'm into and enjoy making, and a lot of which could fit in a game context.
Right.
But when he saw the Floor Kids thing, he was really interested in seeing what he could do with that, and that was it. We basically found a team of coders that was willing to take on the challenge of, okay, we have 10,000 frames of animation, 16 individual moves per character, over 100, what do you call those?
The joke was there's 10,000 frames of hand-drawn animation and 10 trillion lines of code to make it all work, but not actually that many. But
you wanted that, when you're playing it, you wanted it to be fluid, so to connect certain top rock moves to certain power moves, it would, John would have to draw this.
Oh, right, like, because the point was that in dance or in this type of street dance culture where you can't be whack, so idle animation is a thing in video games, right? Where like you run, then you're back to idle, you jump, you're back to idle, you shoot, you're back to idle, or even Street Fighter, you like helicopter kick, you're back to idle.
Yeah.
But if you're a b-boy, you don't go back to idle. Idle, that's like a fail state, right? That means you're not doing anything.
Right.
So every move has to, by nature of the subject, of like basically this concept of flowing.
It has to go to
moves.
something else.
Yeah, so you're kind of in this flow state. You're always in this, whatever move you chose, you're in that move until you choose another. And
How did you have to deal with that from a technical standpoint? From creating the characters and then working with the team to make that continue.
That's a really interesting process for me to talk about. It's basically a form of character design. So character design can be how the character looks, what their vibe is, their color ways, and then the moves they have, and also the personality in how they accomplish those moves. Because in break, it's basically you could take a move and twist it to make it your own. You could give it a flavor, a style. And so many of these characters have the same fundamental movements, but they're performing them differently. or some of them are performing moves that are like completely unique.
Yeah.
That like I wanted them to have a move that only they can do, and then maybe that'll inspire others to be like, hey, can I actually do that one? You know, and so basically the process started kind of organically. It was just sort of like, okay, Noogie's got this and this and this, and then Scribbles has this, and so I'm just kind of animating the flavor of it, and then gradually we had to like standardize. Okay, we got this many categories of moves, so we'll have this many moves within each category, and I was always pushing for more moves, so we ended up with 4 moves in each of the 4 categories.
That's all good.
And it kind of was a little bit of a patch selection where maybe I had 3/4 of some character done, and then I had to like dig deep to figure out how to complete the move set for that character. Or maybe other characters, it would be, you know, just because I really want to animate this move, so I'm going to give it to them because it, you know, it completes the power set of something. So
Yeah, I think, you know, we all followed John's lead on this because he's the actual only b-boy dancer in the crew. You know what I mean? So he, in a sense, I think, you know, what I'm grasping what he's saying is that it is kind of an act of, you know, real-time creation. When you're making up your routine or you're freestyling, you know the moves you can do, you're just linking them together in that very moment. So we wanted that experience for the player also, that they're able to create, you know, on the spot and link into different combos, some of which will get you more points than others or whatever. But that's the thing. Even, yes, technically every character has 16 unique moves and over 100 different, you know, alternate paths and stuff like that. But it's not just about triggering all the moves. I don't think you could do that, but that's not actually the way you'll get the most of the game. I think the way you'll get the most of the game is when you actually learn those quirks. Like, oh, this character favors power moves or top rock moves, so if I bring that into the combos all the time, there's just going to be much more flavor in the animation. And so when we watch people play, we can tell if someone's like actually gotten in that deep with the game, that they're actually expressing themselves with that character. And I think that's the level that I think a lot of people who might pick up, say, a dancing game or a rhythm game and say something like, oh, okay, you know, they're always being told exactly, okay, at this moment you have to hit this button, and if you don't, then you lose points. And that's not the point of this game. The game, the way this flows is a little more like, you know, Tony Hawk Pro Skater or something. Where, where you have, you know, a repertoire of moves, but then it's really up to you at the moment how you want to.
Yeah, you can learn learn a collection of stuff to do at the same time.
Yeah.
And you know, it's sort of your style.
Exactly. I mean, it's the same thing with scratch DJing too. Like if you listen to a DJ just has a bunch of different techniques and then just strings them together, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But then when you hear someone who
can do stuff on the fly, you know,
fluently like ties them together and and creates that phrasing, that's where that's where it gets really interesting for me when I hear it. You know, the same thing with breaking or when I'm watching. I think that's
and DJing too. Like you put your mindset in there also, because we would always like riff on like, well, why this? Oh, because it's, you know, there was always like a reason. But I'll just put it back to part of the process was very much from my I guess artistic goal was to make it also a tool of expression, like an artistic expression for the user. So at the beginning of the development process, it was like we were making the controls too of just a dancing app, like controlling a dancer, whereas designing a game is a whole other level of discussion of like what's the goal and stuff. But to us, it was partly like, what is the best feeling to control this character? And remember, we were on mobile first, so we should also mention Jody Allen, who's a B-Girl Feisty, who's in the coding and game design sphere. So she was designing how the fingers would tap and swirl and circle, touch, and it was like touch space. That was the big part of it, was like intuitiveness, how to have it tap your finger and have the character move. So when we were porting to console from mobile, same discussions we had to come up with. How does this translate from touch to control?
Yeah, speak more about how you've evolved from being a mobile game to where you're at now.
I mean,
I think
that's like a lot of stuff that I learned, which was not really even in my mind then, was like, okay, well, we're working on this mobile app that at the time, for me, my goal was maybe a little bit contrary to like the clear goals of a game. It was kind of a little bit like a journey type Tony Hawk exploration. Like, here's all this you can do. What are you gonna do with it?
Right.
What character you pick? The kind of tagline of the game is like, find your style. So like, give you all these different ways to play it. How would you play it? And different people might discover different things that they like. And a big part of that is the charm of like kind of just watching these kids do these incredible strong moves, or dynamic. It's visually dynamic, it's colorful, it's attractive. So what would you do with it? And then when you have that with also like, what is a game? And a game kind of often is maybe has a single goal or has a few very specific goals. And if you were looking at mobile games back then, it was a lot of just fast tap stuff, just single tap and something happens, and then you just do it a lot, right? And we were like the complete opposite to that. We were like, you could do all this stuff, but so then why do you do that? And that question confused me, because of course I want to do it.
Me, never confused me. The answer is the funk.
Yeah, I know, but like,
It's like, why are we doing anything?
yeah, I know, but like putting it into a game is like, okay, how do we allot the points? How do we make it so it's about the points?
So when we were having, our little like conference meetings with the coders, and we were literally, they were like, but explain to us why and sometimes it would just come to that. It's like, because it's funky. It feels
Let the funk
funky.
Let the funk hit it.
It just has more vibe. You know what I mean? And so these are very abstract concepts to.
This is literally like
Some people that think, and no disrespect to them, but at one point, like, we had to start learning how to communicate that it's a feeling thing, right? Like, dance is, scratching is, it's like, you gotta be in that moment, and you gotta like.
you put that in the story too. You're like,
Right.
between the ones and zeros, there is soul.
Exactly. But that's exactly it. There's like, true,
That's great.
True, we could bury ourselves in like in lines of code and logic, but at the same time, it still at the end has to feel free and alive.
Right, right.
And so
That was the trick.
and that was the main thing.
For the most part, I think, we tried a lot of things, and even succeeded at a lot of things that didn't even make it into the final game, right? So we did a lot of like, kudos to the whole team for sticking with it. It was a kind of like, we developed a whole bunch of these things that either worked or felt right, and what would make it in and tie it all together. I think the craziest one was you inventing the strobe state. So one of the other aspects of this game and what we wanted was, of course, there's a basic way to play it, but there's also advanced ways, and there's hidden ways that you can kind of like figure out or discover that the game might not necessarily tell you, but now that we realize we have to tell you, otherwise you won't find it. But
it's more like a fluency thing. At one point, like with anything, like whether you're starting to learn a dance move or learn a scratch or something, at first you just break it down into its components and just really figure out on a very fundamental level. And then after it becomes muscle memory or whatever, that's when it turns into, a way to express, or how you link it. It becomes, that fluency comes later, and that expression might come later. And so embedded in the game code is the ability to do that, you know, because we didn't want to make that type of game where it's like, you exactly have to do this, because then it's just like military marching drum game or something like that. And if you're fast, great. That's not what this is about. I think this is, again, trying to make it dynamic. Like when you watch, you know, B-boys and B-girls in the cypher, the ones that have that, I mean, they'll break their routines up with like a really well-placed freeze and then into, you know, transition to this crazy power move out of that freeze. Then in a way, when you do it in a way that's unexpected, but you know that physically that link can happen, and they do it and it gets pulled off, that's when the actual crowd goes nuts.
Yeah.
And so that's we want that feeling, you know, in the game.
But what's even more, I guess, inspiring to me is when I watch a certain younger audience, when they play the game, they actually start dancing. Yeah. Like either while they're playing, they'll just like their feet are just moving, and they're just everything about the game is so rhythmic and musical and engaging. The tracks, you know, the colors, that they'll pick the character. They have so much selection. They'll pick the character and they'll just connect with it. And then after, sometimes when they're really young, after one play test, they're on the ground trying to, not even trying. They like know how to do it already. They're like, yeah, this is, you know, they're just, so a lot of parents are kind of grabbing these little videos and sending them to us. Just be like, look what is happening.
Yeah, kind of talk more about like what do you hope the, you know, kids get out of this game, and how do even adults will get out of this game? You know, what do you hope the people that are playing these games will get out of it?
Well, for adults who are too lazy to learn how to dance, well, here you go. You can go and just live the dream. I mean, who doesn't want to relive the glory days that they didn't have as B-boys, B-girls, you know? So it's, well,
I was too scared to go into the circle.
Yeah, so it's made for you too, you know? It's for me, washed up, retired, you know,
you can still spin on your
for the
head.
old days. And then for little kids that maybe don't even know about it, and it's now familiar to them. It doesn't mean they have to commit to, you know, become a B-boy, B-girl for their life. But then there's also these kids out there that are really dedicated to it, and they're nasty. They're doing the moves that are already in the game, and they're doing it for real. So then when they see the game, they're like, "Oh, I love this game." You know, it's so.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the short answer is that it's fun.
It's fun. It's the funk.
It's fun and it's funky, but at the same time, it's like it's people. You know, I think what John has created, what he's sort of drawn into everything, into the Fleur Kids universe, you know, whether it's the maps or the characters and how they move, and, you know, he set the benchmark. I just had to try to live up to it with the music and the sound design, and try to, like, you know, he pretty much created, like, this full, you know, the breadth of that universe that he created there, you know, is a lot to explore. There's a lot to enjoy. There's a lot of, you know, inside jokes, even in the artwork, in some of the venues that you might not pick up until, you know, the fifth time you played it, and you realize, oh, there's a baby in the stroller at the grocery store who does this when you do this move. You know, little things like that are kind of like these, you know, little experiential Easter eggs that we threw in there that cracked us up while we were making the game, right? That is just all in there. Not because it, you know, serves any gameplay purpose. Some of that design stuff is just for the fun of it.
Right.
You know, but we did, you know, have a lot of fun with that part of it too. You know, and I think, you know, it's the same thing. Like the first time I saw John's animation of Noogie doing a 6-step, it was on pieces of paper. He had done it, you know, as a flip book, and I was flipping through it, and I just couldn't stop flipping through it. I was like, this is just ultimately just the most captivating thing. I could pretty much just do this. Yeah, and so you know, having that feeling too built into the game is great. You know, this really like funky, hand-drawn, sketchy style that he has, but it's alive, you know, and we tried to just make sure that it maintained that feeling also.
Throughout your career, throughout, you know, the Kid Koala career, you've always mixed in a lot of multimedia with your DJing, art, you know, visuals or whatever. How does this game sort of fit into the sort of, you know, legacy that you've already had, you know?
Well, I think if, you know, it's funny, you say multimedia, and I think humans are by nature multimedia creatures.
Right.
Like, even if you're a chef, for instance, it could be just about the flavor, but it's also about the presentation and the color and the, you know, the plating
Yeah.
of something. The experience of where you are when you're eating this dish and how it's served and the music that's playing. It's all, you know, because you could have the most delicious food in the worst environment with the rudest staff, and it'll change like what. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But I'm saying there's a sensitivity to other things. It's not like this tunnel vision of, oh, we're just concerned with just flavor, taste buds, and, you know, molecules hitting taste buds on your tongue.
Yeah.
That's all we're concerned with. Like, I don't believe most people operate or experience things that way. And so with Floor Kids, it's the same thing. It's like, yeah, you've got the craft of the drawing, and but it's not just that, you know. There is a little rhythm game in the choruses that is a target kind of thing, which people actually, for the first time player, they actually really like that, because sometimes the daunting verse sections of each round are a little too intimidating. Like, what, you mean I get to do whatever I want? What, you know? And they go into some sort of anxiety until they start realizing that it's going to be okay, because the more they play, the more they're going to master, you know, each character's repertoire of moves. But I think, yeah, all that stuff, like whether it's like John was saying, the color, the style, the music, how the beats hit, how the sounds work, you know, how you can level and do advanced versions of each move, and all that discovery that's in there is part of it. I think it's a multimedia thing. It's not. There's no way it would have worked if it was just like, okay, actually, you know, this is an 8-bit game, and it's just, you know, this little squad. Oh, maybe it would actually. That game sounds pretty fun to me, also.
You just wanted to answer with an answer about food. You should start about. But we had some fun with the flavor thing and the level with the grocery store.
Yeah.
And this guy's analogies are always going back to food, chefs, ingredients, like.
Well, I think that's one of those things. Like, I've been DJing since I was 12, but I've been eating food pretty much my whole life, and I would
hope
say
so.
like a lot of people also. But that's why I think it's a good baseline from which people can understand.
Definitely,
what's
yeah.
happening. And so here's the thing, you know, sometimes how to present this game. Yes, it's a bit of an outsider. It's a bit of a hybrid. It's not just a rhythm game. It's not just a freestyle game. It's not just a fighting game, even though we have a battle mode, you know. But it's somewhere, you know, we took the parts that made sense to fit in this world that John, this animated world that JonJon had created. Again, like falling back upon a lot of just the rules of b-boying and b-girl, you know, culture and scratch culture, and just trying to just apply that. That kind of was our guiding light too. Still, you know what I mean. At the end was like, it still has to maintain that realism, even though it's 2D and animated. JonJon was super. I mean, I was there. We were all in the studio together, like pulling crazy all-nighters during crunch time, and he was there, yeah, animating. You know, I need another 40 frames to get from this one move to this other move in this one character. just to link that, because he said if you were to do that move from this freeze to this thing, you wouldn't go back to your, like he said, idle state or middle and then thread through it. He said there's a faster way to do it, and he would actually draw that, and then he'd tell the coders that's what the code would have to find the most fluid way to do it. You know?
And then they'd be like, yeah, but I need that menu asset. And then Eric would be like, yeah, and I need that effects for the fire so I could do the music. And then he'd be like, yeah, and then we need the story cutscenes. Yeah. And then Amesh would be like, oh, I need the tutorial, like Joyce-Con spinning. So I ended up doing a lot, like in the crunch time, I ended up doing a lot of my animation stuff I wanted to animate really late at night. So during the day, I'd be just pumping out assets to what everyone needed, like, you know, that was by crunch time. So it was fun.
A great time. That's at the end of the day, you know, despite it was several years in the making, this game, but it was fun. We were learning a lot, and we still get a kick out of just like doing events like these, and having people just not knowing anything about the game, or not actually, some of them not even having any, you know, background knowledge or experience with b-boying or b-girling or scratching or any of that side of it, and then just having that be a little bit of a, you know, gateway into something else. And
let's talk about that a little bit more. Like what are people like? Talk about sort of, you know, what people's expectations in regards to like hip hop, scratching, b-boying, and how you're able to like sort of, you know, educate them on that.
I mean, I don't, you know, it's not an educational game percent, but if you look closely, you'll see that there's a lot of love and reverence for that, because it's what, you know, I'm trying to remember that feeling, like the first time I heard scratching, how it blew my mind, and I knew immediately, it was like, I need to learn more about this scene, and that's pretty much, we want that in there, the excitement of it, you know.
Yeah, I think that we definitely didn't set out to be some kind of like, we definitely didn't set out to be sort of an educational tool. It was more like, this is our muse. Like for me, this is my muse, or this is some kind of endless inspiration.
Yeah.
You know, and I just always thought it was the coolest thing that, you know, I could arrive in a new city, and it would be very easy to just randomly, accidentally meet some b-boys, b-girls on the street or something,
right.
just practicing, or, you know, cypher with them. I think that I'm much more connected with like practicing, you know, showing up to the practices and learning,
right,
and elevating myself. And then recently I've been doing a few little battles, like one-on-ones and stuff, just for fun, but I'm not really like on a serious level like that. But as a spectator, I love coming and watching, because the competitors, they have their own style of movement, they have their name, they're getting their stuff out there, they have their art form, and it's basically like your local superheroes of, you know, music and hip hop. They're like superheroes. They've just got these unique special powers that they just keep honing.
Yeah.
And when the moment comes, you know they're gonna pull it out, or whatever it is, or you see how they've evolved. Basically, I guess we're setting up here.
Yeah.
With this floor. So I drew. We brought a vinyl floor mat, because it's all carpet here for the listeners.
Right.
And then before we came, I just sort of like did some little sketch marker tags of all our characters.
Right. Looks dope. Yeah, I like that.
And then I think we're just gonna keep adding little drawings to this floor, and have it like have a little bit of history as we go along. But I think what we're trying to do is be as inviting as we can to people who may not have given this kind of subculture a second look.
Right.
But then also in that way of being inviting, not like still staying true to what we experienced or what at least our memories were.
Yeah.
Because the scene has definitely evolved and it's like totally different now. I think it's like worldwide stage, big stage.
Right.
And
Right.
what I remember was like they would just break out in a club or in a spot in a tight, small, loud environment, and you do these incredible things in a small amount of space, or maybe outside on the concrete. And so, anyways, that's just kind of just rambling at this.
Yeah, and kind of like what I asked him also. How do you feel like Floor Kids fits into your life and career?
Me, I think Floor Kids is one of my life's work. It's not the only, but it's what definitely represents, just on a sheer volume of animation and decision making, frame by frame. Just every single one of these characters, like in a playable game, not just being in a clip of animation that you can watch, but meaning anytime you want to make this character do that move, they can go into it. And so as far as that, it's definitely one of my life's work, because it's coming from a real passion of mine,
Right.
that I still participate in, that I'm still trying to elevate myself bit by bit, and so in a way, maybe the animation was just this way for me to short circuit that and cheat a little bit and do these moves that I can't do still,
Right. Live vicariously
like
through it.
This is just easier. I can just make it spin forever,
Right,
It's
right.
funny. It's kind of funny too.
Yeah, it is.
Like I have fun when I draw these characters, so that's its own little kind of perk, is that it just so happens I get to draw my characters the way I want, make them move the way I want. I get to draw them with clothing folds, because in the animation world, often we simplify so much. We simplify to the point where the line work is expected to be a certain way, and I just got to go loose and do my own thing. So,
What do you see as the future for Floor Kids, and then what's the future for you?
future for Floor Kids is, for now, I think it's like climbing these different mountains. You reach a peak, and you just look out and you see where the next way is. So right now we're in, a bit of promo mode, where not full-time promo mode, but just where we can pop up, invite people, let everyone experience it, and just get the idea of what Floor Kids is out there to more people, until we can find the next way forward, whether that is to expand the game, whether that is to make a sequel to the game, or whether it's that the brand of Floor Kids as an animation, music, interactive universe gets to continue in some other way, maybe in a more traditional like narrative, like films, or litter, like books or print media. Like, it can go anywhere. It just, the way that we operate is when the opportunity presents itself, and the way, if the opportunity is, is fun or whatever.
Wherever there's the best, late night food.
Yeah, there's like food again.
Sorry, what were we talking about?
We're just seeing what the future of Floor Kids. Where how
Floor Kids is like a cafe, restaurant or something.
we're gonna open a restaurant, and the Floor Kids restaurant. We're just gonna But how is it available now?
It's available on all platforms: PS4, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and Steam. For download. It's an indie title, so you have to go to each of those respective online stores to download the game, but it's available.
Right. And I always like to end my interviews with the same question, and if you don't have an answer, then it's fine. But who is somebody that's been a part of each of your lives or careers that I could realistically interview for my podcast that would have some good stories or lessons to talk about?
About video games?
About anything pop culture, like whether it's a music artist, and I have a variety of guests on I have comic book artists, I have music artists of different types, just anybody that's kind of a part of pop culture.
You should speak to my dude Dan the Automator. If you haven't, you should, and just bring food into it, and it'll have plenty to talk about. Also,
I'm a big Dr. Octagon fan.
So say the question again.
Who's somebody that
anyone else we could refer for his podcast?
Yeah, who has been somebody that's been a part of your life or career that would
like personally, or in terms of like being inspired by,
or personally, that I could realistically interview that would have some good lessons or stories to talk about. I always say realistically because I don't want you to be like, you should interview Lil Wayne. You should interview Keith Richards. I'm like, no, I can't do that.
I would probably shout out some of my animation friends, my animation filmmaker friends, but I'm trying to think of who would be. I would say, do you know a filmmaker called Lillian Chan? She's a director.
Sounds familiar, but yeah, inform.
We kind of.
There's always good stories that come out of this question, also.
Well, we went like. Eric knows Lil too, and we're all like kind of in the same. Lillian.
Oh yeah, Lillian.
So Eric scored Lillian's film at the National Film Board of Canada, and me and Lil, we went to the same art high school. We went to the same animation school.
Okay.
And she's in Toronto. I don't know if she's gonna be here but she's probably got a lot of good stories and experiences on animation and. Yeah.
Yeah, and you should speak to my man Dave Lawrence from that movie Fubar. If you're up in Canada, he's based out of Calgary.
Okay.
He's a writer, director, actor, comedian. Always fun interview. And Money Mark, keyboard Money Mark. I don't know if you're ever in LA, hit him up. He's always up to something interesting.
And okay, before we get out of here, where can people go online to get more information about what you guys are doing and what about Floor Kids?
Online, floorkids.com is our website. There's the Instagram, Floor Kids Universe. Maybe go to Kid Koala's Twitter and his Instagram. He's always posting stuff about that.
That was my interview with Kid Koala and JonJon, recorded at this year's Toronto Comic Arts Festival, TCAF. And all the information about where you can check out Floor Kids and where you can play it at are in the show notes for this episode at freshthepodcast.com. It was great talking with them, too. All right, thank you for listening. Goodbye and good night.
Fresh is the word.